And greetings, happy Thursday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show, live and on demand right here on BlazeTV, radio and podcast. I'm Steve Deace. Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre are here with me as well. Let us know what you think about what we think if you're here with us too. Steve at stevedeace.com. That's how you can email the show, DEACE. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show, and look for us as well on MeWe, Parler, and Gab. And look for uncensored free clips of the program at rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. We've really been pumping that page the last few weeks, and we're approaching 10,000 subscribers over there, so we'd like to see that explode all the more. So rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. Again, rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. Coming up on the show here today on a Thursday, Theology Thursday, we have gotten quite a bit recently into more of the intellectual and philosophical side of things, which is important. But today we're going to kind of be reminded of what's really at stake on a personal level. So we'll get into that with Theology Thursday as well. We'll play our little game of 3 non-political questions coming up at the very end of the program. At the bottom of the hour, an author that is, of course, no stranger to controversy. Charles Murray will join us, the best-selling author. He wades into the debate about race and America again with us at the bottom of the hour. You do not want to miss that. But until we get to that point, of course, we must begin, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by About Those Masks. A new study from JAMA, at the very least, proves the concept that face masks are harmful for children. Researchers analyzed a randomized controlled trial studying the carbon dioxide content in masks and found that, quote, children should not be forced to wear masks. The lowest level of CO2 measured from air inhaled through the masks that were studied was 0.6%. For reference, the OSHA safety limit is 0.5%. The Supreme Court yesterday elected to leave the CDC's moratorium on evictions in place. That's a sentence that should never be written. Justice Kavanaugh joined the liberal wing of the court in casting the deciding vote to deny a hearing in the case of Alabama Association of Realtors versus the Department of Health and Human Services, saying he agrees that the CDC exceeded its authority issuing an eviction moratorium, but being that it's ending at the end of July, he decided not to hear the case. NBC News is just now coming around to the fact that a Chinese bioweapons leader was involved with research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
In January, a Trump administration fact sheet accused China of secret military activity at a lab in Wuhan. Former State Department advisor David Asher helped write that fact sheet.
I'm very confident that the military was funding a secret program that it did involve coronaviruses. I heard this from several foreign researchers who observed researchers in that lab in military lab coats.
A leading researcher at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, Dr. Shi Zhengli, insists it's only a civilian institution. But NBC News has evidence Dr. Shi herself has multiple connections with military officials. She and others collaborated with a military scientist on coronavirus research in spring 2018, and with another military scientist, Zhou Yusen, in December 2019. In fall 2020, an article that scientist authored lists him in a footnote as deceased. NBC has been unable to ascertain the circumstances of his death.
Back stateside, former President Trump spoke at the border yesterday.
If you don't have great elections, and if you don't have borders, you don't have a country.
Speaking of election integrity, the Supreme Court voted 6-3 today in favor of upholding 2 Arizona voting laws aimed at making it more difficult to commit voter fraud. The court ruled the laws do not target minorities and do not break the Voting Rights Act. Back to Trump, he had an event with Fox News' Sean Hannity.
Where are you in the process of, let me ask you this, without giving the answer what the answer is, have you made up your mind?
Yes.
Checking in on Joe Biden.
I was happy to have President Rivlin here, and I don't want it's not technically appropriate, but I'm so delighted his daughter is here. She's in the back right there. I got to meet her.
Washington Post headline, yes, kink belongs at Pride, and I want my kids to see it. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court has overturned the conviction of former comedian Bill Cosby on charges of aggravated indecent assault stemming from a 2004 incident which he was found guilty and sentenced for in 2018. The court says Cosby's due process rights were violated by the prosecution. And finally, a PSA. As we approach Independence Day, it's important to remember as we celebrate our nation's founding that we celebrate in a responsible and safe way, especially when it comes to fireworks. Especially you, Terry.
Bag up, Terry. Put in reverse, Terry. Put in reverse. Oh, Lord, Jesus. Oh, Lord. Oh, Jesus. What you doing, Terry? Terry, what you doing?
And that's what happened while we were away.
I hope that was pre-screened, that no one was hurt, and therefore it was okay to laugh, right?
Of course.
Okay, I just
played that before.
I just wanted to make sure. All right. If you would like to celebrate responsibly, check out our friends over at Patriot Wine. They've got some of the world's best imported red wine that you can import from Argentina, made with Malbec grapes, grown at a 9,000 plus foot altitude. Some of the best red wine in the world, and it's also healthy for you. It's been lab tested to find up to 10 times the longevity and heart health nutrient known as resveratrol is in these wines compared to where you would get it just about anywhere else. They also don't have a bunch of sugar, so they're healthy. They aren't loaded with sugars, chemicals, additives, about 90% less sugar than the average wine, but don't mistaken that for the fact that they don't have a great taste. We've all tried a bottle of this ourselves, all really enjoyed it. Notes of blackberry, leather, cherry, and smoke. If you want to give it a shot right now, they're giving you 50% off their best imported Malbecs from Argentina, as well as 50% off the shipping. So both the shipping and the product, both of them, you'll get a big discount, half off. You do not need a promo code. You just need to go to the website, patriotwine2021.com. That's patriotwine2021.com. Coming up in the overtime today, C-SPAN has unveiled a list, according to its historians, of the top 10 presidents in American history. And I have to tell you, surprisingly, it's not terrible. I mean, it's not my list, but I wouldn't even argue Obama's on the list, right?
For the first time, yeah.
Yeah, it's the first time he made the list. We're back with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin, Aaron McIntyre, and all of you. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. You can email the show, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. Also look for us on MeWe, Parler, and Gab. And you can look for uncensored, unfiltered comments and clips of the program over on rumble.com, although that's rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. Although based on its owner, Dan Bongino's most recent pop culture take, I may have to make an executive decision here. Apparently, Dan is claiming Nirvana's "Smells Like Teen Spirit" is the greatest rock song of all time.
No.
We all have an off day. All of us do. All of us have a bad day. Okay. I'm just going to say and hope that's his worst take, like on anything. It's not even their best song. It's the most overrated song of all time, if anything. But that is not the greatest rock song of all time.
And they might be one of the most overrated bands, which is not to say they suck.
I agree.
It's just,
Frankly, I think the band that Dave Grohl founded on his own after Kurt Cobain's death is far better than anything Nirvana ever did. I could argue Foo Fighters is the best American band. Well, U2 is not American. Best pop culture band since U2. Looking at their song catalog, I think you can make that argument. I do. It's just a...
You don't also want to enter Dan Bongino territory now, so...
Yeah. Aaron, I know you agree with me on this. On my Foo Fighters take?
Being that they're, yeah.
That they are potentially the best band since U2?
And every single, so let's just put this out there, every single band is basically an iteration of what the Beatles did. Let's just admit that.
Or Elton John. I'm sorry, Elvis Presley.
Elvis Presley. Every single band, but there are a few who break the mold. U2 is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Foo Fighters is one of them. One, because they still make amazing music, but it's not the formula that the Beatles kind of on. It's not it's still original, very original sounding music, and good music at that. Not all original sounding music is good music, but it's original, good music.
I mean, AC/DC is a great example of what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
One of the greatest bands of all time. Nobody would argue against that, and their album sales indicate that. But Agnes Young's essentially been playing the same, 4 or 5 chords on every song since 1973, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that it doesn't really sound that much different as opposed to the evolution that you see with somebody like a U2. Anyway, we will excuse one singular faux pas, even one as incredulously and dramatically off base as this one is. So for now, we will continue to exclusively promote our account at rumble.com /Steve Deace Show. If you're a podcast listener, we are looking for you to please give us a 5-star review. And then also hit the subscribe button if you haven't done those things already. They help the show to grow on the podcast platforms. Those of you that have done that, and there are many of you, thank you very much to each and every one of you. And if you haven't yet, we would urge you and ask you to please consider joining their ranks. This portion of the show brought to you by the pro-life movie Order of Rights, which includes a cameo or two from yours truly, but don't let that stop you from actually watching the film. In 2019, it was voted most inspirational film at the International Christian Film Festival. It takes an interesting, unique look at Roe v. Wade and the life issue from the perspective of a father trying to save his child from being killed, which begs the question, when is a person a person? So if you want to see this film, it's available right now on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, iTunes, Google, Vudu, Vimeo, all those major streaming platforms. You can get it there, rent it or buy it, or you can watch the trailer right now at orderofrightsmovie.com. Again, that is orderofrightsmovie.com, or go to Amazon Prime, Apple TV, iTunes, Google, Vudu, Vimeo. Look for The Order of Rights. So let's get to Theology Thursday. And I've been saving this note for a couple of weeks, waiting for the right time to share it. And I think now's a good time because we have spent so much time here on Theology Thursday in recent weeks. Like last week, right? We broke the seal. I figured, what the heck, man? I already broke the seal on eschatology. Let's go ahead and break the seal on predestination. The other one I used to tell you, don't ask me. I don't want to, because every time no matter what answer I give, everybody goes nuts. I must tell you, either I gave a really good answer or a really bad one last week, because not too many people went nuts one way or the other on my answer, which means it was either really good or really bad. Okay. Either people are like, wow, I never thought of it that way before. Like, wow, that's so lame. I can't even, I can't even get self-righteous about it. That's just so self-evidently terrible. I'm going to ignore. It's one of the two. But we have talked a lot, right? A lot from the philosophical side of this recently, right? And the strictly theological and the theological preciseness angle, right? Mm-hmm. And that's all very, very important. But every now and then, I think we need to be redirected at what is primarily important. What the prime directive is. Now, what does prime directive mean? Does that mean only directive? Is that what it means?
No.
Does it mean the other directives are therefore unimportant? No. But there is an overarching priority, right?
Right.
There is one priority to prioritize them all, so to speak.
Hierarchy of truth.
Yes. And I believe that both the scriptures and the history of how God has interacted with this creation indicates that the prime directive, that nothing is more important to God than people. God himself came in the form of a person. God himself didn't lay down his life for social justice, He didn't lay down his life for Calvinism. He didn't lay down his life for Arminianism or dispensationalism. He didn't lay down his life for Catholicism. He didn't lay down his life for sola scriptura. He didn't lay down his life for should the church be in Rome or Constantinople. That's not why God came in the flesh and laid down his life. He laid down his life for people. Now, are all those things I just mentioned and all those values or entities or movements or belief systems, are they important on a certain level?
Yeah.
Are they worth contending with or for on a certain level?
Yes.
Yes. But are they the prime directive? I would argue no. That nothing is more important to God than people. Nothing is. To the point he would lay down his own life for shared beliefs. Love knows no greater man than this, that a man would lay down his life for shared beliefs. That a man would lay down his life for social justice. That a man would lay down his life for a fully consecrated and orthodox systemic theology. No, that's not what Jesus has said himself.
No.
That a man would lay down his life for his friends. I go to prepare a place for you. You. That's a very, I know we're struggling with our pronouns today. That's a very personal one. It's direct. You. I go now to prepare a place for you. You. Directly. An individual. Nothing's more important to God than people, which is why he's willing to work through imperfect people to reach people. Because if he didn't, how many perfect people are there?
Low number.
Yeah, so there's only what kind of people that God could possibly work through.
That would be the imperfect.
There's only the imperfect variety. People are like, well, God works through imperfect because he could only work through imperfect people because there aren't any perfect people. So there's only imperfect ones. So he has to work through troublesome, problematic, challenged, imperfect people because those would be the only kind that you would find on this planet currently and ever.
And this show.
Yes. Amen to that. So today I want to share a note that recalibrates this point. One of the things we've often said on our show is that people aren't constructs. Don't treat them like that. They're not formulas. They're not ratios. They're not algorithms. They're people. People are complicated. I'm complicated. You are. All of you listening and watching right now, you're all complicated. All of us are capable of doing things we don't want anybody to know about and that we would be ashamed of 5 minutes ago or 5 minutes from now. And then at the same time, while we're in the middle of doing that, if something we placed on a higher priority, like our own kids, were in danger, we would drop that secret sin that we just can't let go, but that we aren't proud of, but we want to in our flesh indulge in. But we would drop that for the thing of a higher priority, maybe even do a heroic act in order to preserve or save that, right?
Yes.
Was I any better or worse of a person in either one of those moments? Either the moment that I did this heroic act or the moment that I engaged in terms of my value to God. Was I any better or worse? No. Did Jesus die for me if I only did these heroic acts? Yes. Did Jesus die for me if I only did these things I'm not proud of? Yes. See my point?
Yes.
Yeah. We're complicated. Human nature is complicated. I think of the Ravi Zacharias case, and a lot of this broke while we were getting ready for or on Christmas break last year, and a lot of the reports and everything else had not yet come out. And then by the time it all did, and we came back from Christmas vacation, the story had kind of moved away, and we had a few other things going on in the country in January at that time, if anybody had forgotten, right?
Right.
But this is an excellent example of what we're talking about right here. I don't know on a fundamental level, on a personal level, if Ravi Zacharias was a complete or total fraud. I don't know. Here's what I do know. He damaged people. Here's what I also know. In his sovereignty, God used him to help a lot of damaged people. I was one of them. And I think sometimes our fixation or focus is on where's Ravi now that he's gone? Was he a fraud? And or was he misunderstood? Was he struggling? Was he a sociopath? Or did he just have a secret sin in his life he just never let go and it engulfed him? These are the conversations that have been had, right?
Yes.
Okay. But who's being left out of this equation? We're exclusively talking about who? Ravi Zacharias.
Mm-hmm.
Who are we not talking about? God. Whether Ravi wasn't a fraud, but just swallowed a portion of his life was swallowed up by his own unconfronted darkness, and it impacted and damaged other people, or whether he was a complete and total fraud from the beginning, frankly, is irrelevant. Because the God he proclaimed, whether he believed it fully or didn't understand or never did that God still bring a reckoning to the people that Ravi Zacharias victimized? Did they still get their reckoning? Did they still get an acknowledgement of what had been done to them?
Right.
Yes, that occurred.
Yes.
There was still justice is happening there, right? Yeah. Did God still use the magnificent platform that Ravi Zacharias had for decades to reach a lot of people at the same time?
Right. Also as well.
So God both brought justice for Ravi Zacharias's brokenness and darkness, but then in the light also used him to bring light to others at the same time, right?
Indeed.
Kind of cool to be God, to be sovereign outside of space and time. That is God a God of justice, or is he a God of mercy or judgment? Yes.
He's why we need to understand the term paradox.
Right. The whole time we have been fixated and have watched videos, there's countless videos on YouTube debating the Ravi Zacharias question. What's weird, though, is that we never debate how magnificent God must be, that justice for whom Ravi violated is occurring. At the same time, there are still how many people across the globe that woke up shocked at this news because of the impact that God allowed Ravi to have on their lives? I'd be one of them, right? I bring all that up because I want to share this note. I've been a listener for about a year, having discovered you shortly after the lockdown started. Admittedly, I wasn't a fan at first. We get that a lot.
Yeah, I know.
But I kept listening. I don't know, is it a compliment that people who don't like us just keep listening anyway?
Yes.
Is that like, because guys know me, I make kind of snap decisions. If I don't like something, I'm out, right? And then I don't go back in unless you come up with something new that changes my mind. It is odd to me that we get a lot of people who didn't like us at first, but then just keep coming back for more. That's weird, because I'm the opposite. If I don't like something right away, I'm hitting the eject button. I maybe eject too quickly. Admittedly, I wasn't a fan at first, but I kept listening because you were sharing information that nobody else was touching. I also appreciated your unapologetic approach to bringing God into discussions. I'm a Christian worship minister, and I sometimes struggle with how to talk about political matters with others because I tend to shy away from pushing my beliefs into arguments with those who don't share those worldviews. That said, I'm writing because while I haven't heard much of anything you've said that I don't agree with, I'm having an extremely hard time with your approach to the trans argument. It's obvious to me that you don't have anyone in your life who struggles with this. My husband and I raised our daughters, we have 3, with our Christian beliefs, but each one has walked away to some degree or another as they entered their teen years. Our oldest is now 20, so's mine. And she started sharing with us around age 14 that she thought she might be a lesbian. We've talked, yelled, cried, and/or prayed over this almost daily since then. She's since decided to identify as non-binary and bisexual. She's now pursuing testosterone treatments and top surgery to try to attain her imagined ideal of being androgynous. While my husband and I don't agree with any of this and are scared to death about the decisions she's making and the repercussions they'll have, we've also come to realize that we only have a couple of options at this point. Love her and accept the decisions are hers now. These are decisions that are now hers to make, or lose her. After one particularly intense evening of trying to understand why she feels the need to surgically alter herself and trying to talk her out of it to no avail, My husband and I had similarly intense prayer sessions about what God's plan is for us and our daughter. While I was praying aloud, my husband felt that God told him to trust him but love her. I can't tell you how many tears we've shed over this and the fear that grips us even now. But we keep coming back to those words and Jesus' commandment to love others as ourselves. You have teenagers, and you know that you know that talking to them is like trying to convince a brick wall to be a jellyfish sometimes. Yes. My point if ever I have ever believed that the number one thing driving this program was my masterful ability to articulate and be eloquent, having 3 teenagers at one time cured me of such an affliction. Yes.
That's a yo.
I became, somehow overnight with all 3, I went from, I need to know this man's opinion about everything to, I don't want to know this man's opinion about anything.
I've lived in that house.
Yes. Okay. My point in writing is to let you know that it's not as easy as you make it sound. I can't change my daughter's mind through force of will, and if I keep trying, she'll cut me out of her life. I'm depending on God to reach her heart. All I can do is love her through this, not agreeing with her, but loving her all the same. I just thought you should hear the perspective of someone who's on the front lines of this madness and can only fight the spirit of the age through prayer. Keep up the fight, but don't forget the love, brother. That is sincerely, Catherine. Catherine, first of all, thank you for this outstanding note. And I was so touched by it, I chose to share it for a Theology Thursday. All of the points that you make are vital to remember, because nothing's more important to God than people, including you, your husband, your daughter, and the struggle she's undergoing right now. If you would have known me at 16 or 26, you would have had no idea. None. Zip, zilch, nada. I'd be doing what I'm doing right now in the way that I'm doing it. None. I reached out to some of my high school friends recently because it's our 30th anniversary for our class reunion, and I want to know if we were having one. We've had previous reunions, and a lot of times I just couldn't make it. But then, frankly, one of the reasons I didn't go is I'm just such a dramatically different person. Like, I don't think any of my high school friends would be shocked I'm in broadcasting and in politics. But if you knew the way I approached those things, not even from where I stood on the issues, but just who I was as a person, they'd be shocked I'm doing it like this. And it's kind of the whole thing about, can the dog return to its own vomit? As the prophet believed in his own hometown. Does that make sense?
Oh, completely.
But now I'm kind of, I think I've grown more and I'm more comfortable with reconciling those two things, having raising children of my own, that I'm now more open to going back and seeing some of those old friends of mine. But your daughter's story isn't finished yet, just like mine wasn't finished yet. Arguably the greatest theologian in the history of the church, at the very least, the greatest theologian in the post-Bible time world, was Augustine. What was he doing at 16, 26, Todd?
He was not chaste.
No.
In his own words.
He literally belonged to a sex cult. Literally. And Maria, I believe, was that his mother, right? His mother's name, was it Maria? I thought. Or Monica. Is it Monica?
Monica. Thank you.
Right.
You had it close.
Right.
It was an
I knew it was an M word, yes. I mean, his mother, Monica, prayed for him constantly. Constantly. A guy who was in a sex cult became, I would argue, and I think most people would, regardless of where you're at theologically, the most influential theological thinker in a post-Bible time, meaning when the Bible was actually being written in real time, in a post-Bible time era. St. Augustine. Paul, when he was Saul. He held the tunics, the clothing garments, for those who decided to stone Stephen, the first martyr in the history of the church. and to murder him in cold blood. He held their garments for them so they wouldn't get in the way, so they could more efficiently stone him to death and faster and bloodier. I was just, just a common courtesy here, right? That guy ends up writing most of the New Testament. Kathy, you provided some good, or Catherine, I don't think I know you well enough to say Kathy yet. Catherine, you provided some good encouragement to us to reset things as a reminder. And we take your perspective to heart, which is why we're not going to differ with it whatsoever and just receive it. Let me now encourage you. Your daughter's story isn't written yet. There's probably plenty of nights poor Monica thought her son's story was going to end poorly. Is that fair?
Oh, yeah.
His influence is still felt within the church to this day, over a millennia later. It's possible that other than Jesus himself, has any person had more of a direct impact on the direction of history than St. Paul? He's at least in the conversation. In the last couple thousand years, is he at least in the conversation?
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. He was willing to have people killed where they stood for believing this. The story's not over yet. Moses murdered somebody with his bare hands. He's probably the most influential living figure before Christ in all of human history. Is that fair?
Yes.
Yeah. The story's not over yet. So let me return the encouragement you gave us to remember that we're not just dealing... Are we dealing with theologies and philosophies and moralities here? Are we dealing with those things?
Yes.
We are. But are we just dealing with those things?
No.
No. We're dealing with people. Jesus knew your daughter, Catherine, was going to threaten to mutilate herself and maybe even go through with it. And yet he chose to die for her anyway. Her story's not over yet. That would be our return encouragement to you. The temptation you're going to have is, how do I do this? See, you've rightly confronted temptation the other way, which is, she clearly knows we don't approve, but do I lose my daughter in the process? Like that, you have clearly confronted that temptation that way, right? That's a good thing to confront. Don't let the temptation, though, corrupt you the other way. Well, because I don't want to lose my daughter, now I do agree with these things. One of the Supreme Court justices in Roe v. Wade admitted years later, one of the reasons he voted the way that he did is his daughter was pregnant at university. He didn't want to have her keep the kid and maybe lose her potential. And 50 of you are going to email me which judge was it. I can't remember the name. So the temptation works both ways. We got to remember that, okay? Let's not be so stifling with theological preciseness that we drive our children away when it's clear that God hasn't finished their story yet. Fair?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've gone through this. I'm not, I'm probably give more details about our home away than maybe even I should. But believe me, there's plenty I keep back. I have great relationships with all of my children. But they're older now. They don't agree with the old man on everything, believe me. The oldest, who's 20 as well, she's a carbon copy of me, just prettier. So it's like arguing with myself, all right? I get it, okay? But we can't let the temptation take us the other way, though, now, too. Well, it's because I want to maintain this relationship that now I'll start agreeing with these things. Jesus still loved your daughter enough to die for her, but did he change his position on the issue for her?
He is the position.
That's exactly right. Yes. So the best thing we can do with our children is to try to, and with others, is to try to model that. I'm not changing my position for you. I'll give you everything short of that. I can. Being flexible again, right?
Yes.
It's just if you ask me to deny my maker, I can't do that. Anything short of that, I'll be as flexible as I possibly can. But if you ask that one thing of me, now you're rendering unto yourself that which is not yours, and I can't do that. So thank you for your note, Catherine, and your reminder about where our ultimate priorities lie. And our encouragement to you would be, your daughter's story isn't over yet. So keep the faith. You guys have any thoughts?
Well, that, first of all, you didn't tell us, and I wasn't entirely sure where you would go.
Yeah.
That was, it was beautiful. The good, the true, and the beautiful. Listen, never stop pursuing your daughter. She is a lost sheep right now, and that clearly causes great pain. But the story about those lost sheep are there for us to know from the very beginning. They are made plain. Pursue them, but you're pursuing them to save them. That's the tension Steve is talking about. You're not pursuing them to accept them. You're pursuing them to save them. And I don't, right now, that paradox, that tension is clearly something that you want to put on a shelf. I get it. If this was your form, your outlet, you needed to process that, God bless you, sister. We're happy to be here for you. But now you must move past that tension into the reality of this thing. Your daughter needs you now more than ever, and it doesn't require excuses. It requires the deepest form of love you've ever given her.
Yeah, it's nothing. Again, going back, the answers to the future are in the past, and you can't change the past. This is not about parenting or anything like that at this point. It's about letting her go while still praying, and like Todd said, a love deeper than you've ever had before. And we're with you, and we'll be praying as well. Sorry.
Back here on the Steve Deace Show, and we have been warning you now about home title theft for quite a while, and this is where cyber thieves can remove you from your home's title because they take personal information they've acquired, like, when Facebook has a data breach that impacts 500 million people, like they just did, that just happened. So now they might know a maiden name, a middle initial, or a full middle name, something that you use where you would verify a password or log in as yourself. And so if you've got identity theft and they try to, steal your identity, that gets activated. A lot of credit card companies, PayPal, things of that nature have these automatic kickers now too. So how do they get around that? Well, instead they go after your home. They take that personal information, log in to where your home's title is kept as yourself, make it look like you sold your home to them with a quick claim deed, and before you know it, they've taken all the equity in your home away from you. Don't let that happen to you, and that's why when you have a high-risk breach like we do right now with Facebook, take advantage of 30 free days of protection with our friends over at Home Title Lock. Go to HomeTitleLock.com and use the promo code RADIO. That's HomeTitleLock.com. Promo code RADIO. Find out if you're already a victim and don't know it. Get 30 free days of protection at HomeTitleLock.com. Promo code RADIO. It's time for 3 non-political questions.
We all have questions.
Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? Who am I? A search and a question of identity. Why am I here? A question of meaning and purpose. Where am I going? Question of destiny.
Some better than others.
What sort of morality or proto-morality would you expect to find in a chimpanzee troop?
Injecting some levity into the demise of Western civilization. It's 3 questions on the Steve Deace Show.
Yes, I don't know about you folks. If you've been listening this year, I thought the first 90 minutes of today's program probably one of the best episodes of the year so far.
Wow, thank you.
And then there's 3 non-political questions.
And there's only just you and I, because Todd had to eject to apparently have another kid to make an Olympic team or something. So he had to go catch a flight or something.
What a lame excuse.
I know.
Lame.
I know.
Total.
Remind me to fire him when he gets back.
Yeah, exactly. Question number 1, and feel free to expound as much as you please. If everyone you came into contact with, including your family, either feared or loved you, can be no in between, either feared or loved you, would you rather be feared or loved?
In my family?
Including your family.
In my family, I'd much rather be loved. In what I do for a living, I'd much rather be feared.
See, it's the crux.
All right. So, outside of what I do, I think I'd rather be loved. But, you know, it's the old Richard Nixon line, if you need a friend in politics, get a dog, okay? The problem nice people have in this arena is they end up, well, you know what? Let me use an anecdote from a good friend of mine. I think I've said this story on the show before. So a buddy of mine used to work on Capitol Hill for a congressman. And a bunch of the staffers got together once a few years ago and decided to take a self-defense course training. And they had a Navy SEAL come in. They was going to teach him how to use firearms and everything else. And this guy was not inexpensive, by the way. So first day, they're all there. And this Navy SEAL holds up his gun. And he says, all right, I need to know right now before we get started, how many of you, if yourself or someone you care about is in danger, is willing to kill somebody with this weapon right now? And anybody who didn't raise their hands, he refunded their money on the spot and said politely, you need to leave. This isn't for you. And the reason why is because he said, if I train you how to use this weapon and you're not capable or better yet, willing to use it, you're more dangerous because you'll have one of these on you. Maybe a home invader or a perpetrator doesn't. Maybe he's just got some other weapon or a knife or something else. But then he'll take your gun and use it against you and or your loved ones. I'm better off not training you if you don't have what it takes to use it. Doesn't mean he said, hey, doesn't mean you're a terrible person. It just means this isn't for you.
Get an Axon taser.
Yes. Thank you. And that's what happens to nice people in politics. Kind people. People that you want your sons and daughters to marry. People that you want to have in charge of your nonprofits and your mission trips and your mission fields and your ministries. That there's such a concentration of darkness here that if you're not willing to do what it takes to confront it, I get it. I get it. At my age, why was I playing MLB The Show till 12:30 last night?
Get away.
I got to wind down, man. I can't just, I don't want to, I'm not a soldier, but the scene in The Hurt Locker that I've always resonated the most with is when Jeremy Renner finally agrees to come home, and he comes home to the gal who played Kate in Lost, just the beautiful gal. That's his wife. He's got a brand new baby, right? And they're going to the grocery store shopping, and he just feels out of place. Like he's been at war for so long, he can't dial it back and just rejoin the Gen Pop. It's awkward to him. I have to, pardon the expression, and I don't know if you've faced this yet. I don't know. I have to transition. When you go into a chamber, when you come out of a spacewalk, and they scrub you down and everything to make sure you didn't bring anything in with you before you go back onto the ship. You know what I'm saying? I have to do that so that I can re-embrace just being a guy named Steve again.
Yep.
And that's why I'm, when I can't shut my brain down, I'll spend 2 hours researching when everybody's in bed, hey, I mean, what would the college football playoff have looked like for 20 years if we had a 12-team playoff? Because I need to recalibrate it, man. I need to redirect it.
Yep.
And so it doesn't mean you're a terrible person. In fact, you're probably a much better person than me, frankly. It does mean you're really not going to be any good at this. Because you'll either end up you'll be Mike Pence, pious, well-intentioned, personally serious about your faith walk. But the minute that you're really directly challenged, you'll crumble every single time. You don't have what it takes. You just don't. And it's okay. I don't have what it takes to be a Marine, so guess what? I never tried to join.
The Marines.
The Marines.
Yeah.
I recognized early on, I don't think I have what it takes, so don't try that. The other thing that'll happen is you'll become a sellout. And the reason you'll become a sellout is because you need so much affirmation from other people. And trust me, in politics, there's lots of ways to get affirmation, and almost all of them are bad. I'm not unaware of the talent level God has given me. And I have no problem talking about it because it wasn't like I saved up my money and bought the talent. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It was given to me. I have no problem bragging on the gift giver. I didn't do any of this. You and I were joking during the break when colleges have sent their kids to come and learn how to do this from me. They asked me, how do you do this? I'm like, I don't know how to tell you to do it. I just know I can do it. I don't know. This is what I was born to do. I was made for this. I don't know how to answer that. With the talent level God has given me, I could have had a number 1 best-selling book a long time ago, folks. If it would have been Mitt Romney Will Save America, would that have hit number 1 probably? Oh yeah, it would have, you bet. They'd have made sure it did. John McCain will be the best president ever. That might have hit number 1. No, I just refuse to do those things. That's why it's taken us this long to get to the place that we're currently getting to. And so if you go into this nice, you'll either you're going to get rolled, not even Rick rolled, steamrolled, man. Get a spatula to scrape you off the sidewalk. You're like that piece of cheese in the children's books. Which books are those? Roderick Rules. Which ones am I thinking of? With the junior high, where they won't eat the cheese off the playground ground, because if you do that, you have cooties for the rest of the school year because it's been stuck to the ground for so long. That is what politics will do to you. It's what it does to people like Mike Pence. Or you're going to become a whore because you need the affirmation of others so badly. You can't handle being on your own. You can't handle being isolated. You can't handle being a contrarian. You can't handle the ratio. You can't handle the blowback. You can't handle the heat. And so you'll end up doing what it takes to get the affection and recognition that you desire, that you crave. And that will require some form of an indecent exposure or proposal of your soul. That answer your question? So in this arena, I want to be feared. Yeah. Everywhere else, I'd much rather be liked.
So, yeah, this question is kind of impossible to answer because of that, because you have to compartmentalize, but not to get off on a technicality here, and it's not my intention to pull your pants down. I don't think this is pulling your pants down, but the question is, I would rather be loved, but we're not given that choice. I would rather be universally loved because it would be a lot easier if just everybody loved you. Everybody loves Aaron, everybody loves Steve, but we're not really given that choice in the arenas in which we are. Hopefully at home, it's always love. But it's sometimes, you know what, when the boy here in a few years or less than a few years, it takes, I've noticed with my nieces and nephews as well, love them to death. I've noticed though, it takes them less than a year for that human nature to start showing up. So, it's a healthy fear of dad. When
no child's ever had to be taught no or mine, Aaron, exactly. Ever. You're going to learn that about yours when he arrives this summer.
Of mom and dad, that's probably a good thing. Question number 2, if you were offered a cameo in an upcoming or a remake of any film from the past, what role would you most like to play?
I would. That's a really good question. You know what, man? I'm going to go with, could I be like a cameo as like, a Jedi Knight with wielding a lightsaber, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Or could I be a cameo role as Lombard, who is the kind of douchebag sports writer at the Daily Planet?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But it would get me on the set of a Superman movie. Yeah. All right. So I think I'd go with one of those two things.
That's a good idea. I think for me, there are some speaking and smaller roles in the Harry Potter films. I would go with maybe Cedric Diggory or something like that. I don't really know if you call that a cameo necessarily.
Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
There you go.
Thank you, Spencer. I'm sorry.
Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
Yes, that was the movie I was referencing earlier.
Gotcha,
Yes,
gotcha.
yes.
So something Harry Potter wise, especially when I'm flinging a wand around.
Dude, have you seen the guy who played Neville Longbottom?
Dude, is like.
I ain't gay.
Different.
I ain't headed that way, man. But that guy's got some like Kirk Herbstreit level dreamy eyes, brother.
He's a little different now, isn't he?
Yeah. He is certainly not wondering. My understanding, he's married now. But my guess, if he wasn't, he would not have too many free Friday nights.
No, that's for sure. Final question. Probably should have asked this sooner. Wish Todd was here. What best explains the perceived high variance in scoring in Major League Baseball recently meaning the last 2 or 3 years? Secondarily, though, if you disagree with the premise, please state why. But I don't know about you. I'm just checking the scores every night because reasons. And it just seems like there's either fewer than 5 runs scored every night or fewer than 4 runs scored or like 20, 25 runs scored every night. I don't remember that when I was younger in baseball. To me, something has changed. Do you agree? If so, what explains it?
All right, I'll answer that after I talk about real estate agents I trust. If you are getting into the market during these unprecedented times,
Bing.
There it is. And with gusto too. I mean, you really that had some real flourish behind it. Thank you. Yes. Make sure you go in with an agent that you know you can trust with a fully verified, validated record of success who will come in, take charge of your situation while knowing that ultimately, though, you're the one that's in charge. Where would you find this ideal specimen of a real estate agent? Well, the name kind of says it all. Head over to realestateagentsitrust.com. Again, the website is realestateagentsitrust.com. And that's where you might even run into somebody who's a fellow Blaze viewer or listener, because that's how this thing got started. Just people tired of being disappointed by agents and realized, hey, we've got some good ones in our audience around the country. Let's connect them with listeners and viewers in their area. And that just kind of mushroomed from there and became a national network now. Realestateagentsitrust.com is the website. Again, that's realestateagentsitrust.com. So here's a potential answer I have to your question, and you tell me if you think it has merit.
Okay.
It's you basically grew up in the Royd era.
In the 2000s.
Yeah. That's when you grew up.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I'd watch the Tigers on WDIV in Detroit with George Kell and Al Kaline like every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I mean, they might win 10-1 Saturday and it's 2-1 Sunday the next day, almost the exact same lineup.
Yep.
Some of it is who's the pitcher, right? You're only as good as in baseball, momentum is only as good as tomorrow's starting pitcher, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if there's more variance now because there's more of a human element now, because there's less of an artificial element now.
Yep.
That human nature is a variant. Human nature is a variable. Human nature's unpredictable, inconsistent. We don't have consistent 50, 60 home run a year hitters, which we had like a dozen or so when you were growing up. I think that could be maybe what the issue is.
No, that makes sense. That's a pretty good explanation, because in other sports you see, I don't know if you follow this during the NFL season, the scorigami thing that I think a couple of guys at SB Nation started years and years ago, but basically tracking the unique scores of different NFL football games, their final scores. And every year, now there's, most games end within a kind of a range, but it just goes to show how much variance there can be. Each year there's a new score, and that kind of underscores the variance. In most sports, it's a lot more random than baseball. I remember baseball being, because a typical baseball game when I was growing up, it was rare that a single team got to the 10-run mark. That's like every night now. So I think that probably makes pretty good sense. Also, I think my answer is difference in philosophy as well. If you're swinging for the fences every time, swinging for that, you're going to hit a bunch some nights.
That's a great point there too.
Other nights,
we're not manufacturing a lot of runs the way we used to.
Small balls.
Double hitters aren't a thing anymore. That's a great point too. All right, we're going to stick around and do the overtime on greatest American presidents ever. For the rest of you, see you tomorrow, John 3:17.